Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Recently I noticed that I haven't done a video on the main universe, 616 Spider-Man. I've only done the Ultimate Spider-Man videos. So today I want to focus on a story called Mythos Spider-Man. Now this is essentially just a retelling of Spider-Man's origin, but in a very modern way, with a lot of tweaks and twists that I think most people, if you're tired of Spider-Man's origin being retold and, you know, sick of seeing the whole story in the movies and all that, this might be a little bit of a refreshing take on it. And it also has some of the best art I've ever seen in a Spider-Man story, so definitely stick around for that. The way this story opens up is kind of reminiscent of the Into the Spider-Verse intro, where he's saying like, okay, let's do this thing one last time. It's kind of Peter from the future after the fact, after his origin has happened, basically narrating the story from that perspective. So the first thing we see is Peter just kind of way off in the background of a school campus saying, you know the story already. Boy meets girl, girl ignores boy, boy meets another girl, she ignores boy too, everyone ignores boy, boy gets the message, boy goes home, nobody notices. Obviously at this point in time, Aunt May and Uncle Ben are still alive, and the first thing that Peter talks about with Uncle Ben is the way he's being treated at school, specifically with Flash Thompson bullying him. And what Uncle Ben basically tells him is that Flash is intimidated by him. He's afraid because of how smart he is, of how capable Peter is, and that Flash is basically just insecure. You know, obviously Peter does not hear this because he's his bully. Flash scared of me? I doubt it. And Uncle Ben says, people are always afraid of intellect. He's scared of your GPA. He's scared that if he spends his life as a knucklehead, he'll end up divorced and working in a garage somewhere. Meanwhile, people like you, people with brains, have all the real power in the world. You just have to decide what you're gonna do with that power. Peter jokes, maybe I could invent an idiot nullifier for Flash, to which Uncle Ben says, power doesn't work that way. If you have power, then you have responsibility. And thus the iconic line. We then see the typical routine of Peter going to the science museum and all that, but different from a lot of adaptations and other iterations of this origin. You know, in this version, there's no Harry Osborn, there's no Mary Jane. The only friend that he has there is a boy named Sammy, who doesn't really seem very interested in all this and is mainly in the background, so not really a huge character there. As always, Spider comes down, bites him, but what's interesting about this is that they display the immediate effects that Peter experiences after the bite, and I think it's really cool, because usually it's like, oh, nothing happens, go to bed, and wake up with the symptoms the next day. But what happens here is Peter immediately starts to panic because of the pain. He even goes as far as to run out of the museum, his teacher yelling after him, and he's just saying, my head feels strange, I need some air. And then he looks down at his hand and it's actually glowing, so the bite is immediately like affecting his entire body. While his brain is still in this fog, he ends up walking into the middle of the street while a car is coming down the road, coming down an alley, and they're unable to stop in time and end up hearing a thud. But when they go back to check who was hit, there's nobody there, and that's because Peter instinctively jumped up, clung to a wall, and hid under a fire escape, completely just bamboozled. And then that takes us to the next morning, where it's starting to affect him. Aunt May is trying to get a hold of him, his door's locked, she's not getting any answers, she's trying to get Uncle Ben to talk him into coming out, and Uncle Ben basically just says, you know, cut him some slack, every teenager gets to play hooky once in a while, this is just something that kids do. And then we cut to the inside of the room, covered in webs, and as we know, in the comics, Peter did not have organic webbing, so that means he immediately developed his web shooters and just got to work right there. And Aunt May is basically, you know, still going back and forth with Ben, saying that doesn't make any sense. Peter likes going to school. You know, Peter being such a smart kid, he loves learning, he loves getting into science and all these different subjects, but what they obviously don't know is that he is learning. We cut to the top of a roof overlooking the rest of the New York landscape, seeing all the buildings in the background during the sunrise. Peter's got this nice little training get up as he's practicing to swing with his webs, and we get some more narration from Peter saying, oldest story in the book, boy meets girl, blah blah, etc. Boy gets bitten by radioactive spider. We get some more shots of him swinging through, being successful with his webbing, all excited, ecstatic, just swinging through the air, vibing, and then he plummets to the ground. It says boy gets excited, boy strikes out. Along the way, boy suddenly discovers he has the proportionate strength and agility of a giant spider. Boy can now see perfectly. Boy builds web spinners and learns to climb walls. Boy freaks out, boy calms down, boy freaks out again. Boy does does what any self-respecting American would do in his situation. He figures out how to use his newfound abilities to make money. And this is where it really starts to differ, because usually where he would like get into wrestling or whatever, instead Peter actually ends up contacting an agent to start booking shows, just kind of like on talk shows, on talent shows, whatever, on TV, and just kind of performs little stunts and like different feats like backflips up in the air and all this stuff, and using his webs to like pull different items to him like a coffee mug. Obviously he has the full suit going now, and for some reason is on Conan's show. I don't know why him specifically, but you know, going by the name The Amazing Spider-Man publicly and just kind of showing off what he can do so he can get paid, you know. So it's a little bit different, but it's cool. The art is amazing here. I love the way he looks in the suit, and you know, it's hitting all the same beats essentially, just in a new way, which is really refreshing. We then cut to a parking garage where Peter is meeting with his agent, and he's getting cash payments. So he's living in the modern world, you know, talk shows, Conan, TV, and all this stuff, but you know, because Spider-Man can't open a checking account legally under that name, you know, he has to get his cash payments. And so his agent's basically telling him, look, you can do the whole mystery man thing for the act, but you gotta play it straight with me. You know, the cash payment is just this once. With this whole get up like yours, there's gonna be liability issues. You're gonna have to sign stuff that holds the promoters harmless. If anybody gets hurt, you might get in trouble. There's gonna be lawsuits and stuff like that. Plus, you gotta claim the money on your tax returns and all this. And Peter just kind of walks away with his money. He's like, I got mine. It's not my problem. It's either this way and you just continue paying me in cash, or I'll find someone else to give my 20% of the revenue to. So he's basically like, I'm getting paid my way or highway. To which the agent basically says, you know, fine. He backs down, but he's like, just work on the suit a little bit because it looks like it was sewn by a blind drunk, which is pretty hilarious considering this homemade suit isn't far off from where it would end up. We then hear someone calling out in the distance saying, hey, stop that guy. A little thief with a purse is running through, trying to get to the elevator where Spider-Man is standing in front of. Cops like, just don't let him get it to the elevator, stop him. And Peter does nothing. Guy runs by basically thanking him for not stopping him, and Spider-Man's just like, whatever. The cop, out of breath, defeated, you know, after the guy gets away, is like, what the hell was wrong with you? You could have stopped him. And Spider-Man's just like, and yet I didn't. Imagine that. Which is like, so, it seems so out of character for Spider-Man, but like when you go back and look at the earlier comics, this is exactly how he was. He was more arrogant, more selfish, because like he explains here, I never saw you or anyone else at my door when I needed you these last few years, so don't blame me for not returning the favor. So he's basically still at the stage of like Flash Thompson and being ignored by everyone at school and just being the kid that's like into all the nerdy stuff, the outcast. He's still in that mindset of, who cares about anyone else? I'm up now, I'm winning. I'm not gonna help everyone else when no one else cared about me. Which, you know, we know Spider-Man is better than that, but it's not totally unfair. We then see that Peter has been contributing that money to Uncle Ben and Aunt May so they can help pay bills and stuff like that, really supporting his family. Aunt May is like wondering where he got the money from, and Ben's like, he told us he got a job. And May's like, what if he's selling drugs though? And Ben's like, well, if he is, he's doing a pretty good job of it. And then we jump to just Peter out and about minding his business, swinging through the air in some of the most gorgeous panels I've ever seen in my life. The coloring is so good. You can see it go from like peak daytime to the sun starting to set and the evening starting to take over. Peter changes in the alley, making sure no one saw. He heads home, only to find cops standing outside his door. Peter asks what's going on. Obviously, as we know, this is where Uncle Ben is dead. The cop basically explains to him that a home invader was like snooping through their windows and saw all the spare cash lying around and decided to break in and try and steal it. Uncle Ben stepped in, tried to stop him, and then got shot and killed. And then conveniently, over the walkie-talkie, the cop gets some intel saying, we have a possible sighting on your suspect. White male, late 30s, blonde hair and a red jacket, seen entering a warehouse on Parlor Street. And the cop turns around and sees that Peter is gone, swinging towards this warehouse, enraged. Peter immediately confronts the suspect. Surprised to see me? And then we get this really striking panel of him crawling down, looking over him. Not half as surprised as you're gonna be. The suspect starts firing off shots, but Spider-Man avoids him, silently staring the guy down. And this is kind of one of those moments that everyone talks about, like, you know, when Batman laughs, it's really creepy because you're not expecting that from him. This is where Spider-Man's really quiet, not cracking any jokes, no lightheartedness. This is when Spider-Man is at his scariest. He charges the man, breaks his wrist on the wall, and sends the gun flying out of his grip. Just absolutely nails the guy, sends him running, saying, you're not real, you're not real. Runs into the other room, but gets webbing on his foot and falls. And Spider-Man drags him back out of of that room, right back into the darkness, grabs him by the shirt and says, You piece of garbage. I should have killed you in the parking lot when I had the chance. And the guy's like begging as he's being dragged up to the top of the roof. Spider-Man says, at this very moment, I have your life in my hands. Do you feel it slipping away? Do you? The guy's still begging, just asking him not to kill him, not to hurt him. Spider-Man hangs him over the side of the building by the collar of his jacket, saying, I have all the power. Say it. Say it. The murderer starts crying, saying, you have all the power, you have all the power. And you can just see Spider-Man's broken face in the background saying, and don't you ever forget it. You killed a good man tonight. Peter pulls him an inch from his face once again, saying, I ought to kill you right now. But I have a responsibility, even to you, remembering his uncle's words and trying to stay true to them even in his darkest moment. And that's the way it goes, Peter narrates. We see him and Aunt May at the funeral. The boy slips up, somebody dies, boy wonders if he'll ever find his feet again. You know the rest of the story. And that's it. That's where it ends. And I gotta say, I know that seems like bleak, really dark way to end it, but like the fact of the matter is that's spot on for Spider-Man. You know, it is a tragic origin that's always been part of it. And, you know, that's really been one of the things that has always made Spider-Man special. Constant tragedy, constantly trying to make up for what he did or what he didn't do. There's always been that layer of tragedy, you know, always losing people, always losing opportunities. And I feel like that's perfectly showcased here in a very, very bleak way. And I think it also nails the darker parts of Peter's personality, especially early on where he was a lot more selfish. You know, a lot of the unfortunate circumstances around his life and the way people would treat him definitely got to him, and he let it overwhelm him and overtake him to where the minute he got the power, he was just kind of like, screw you all, I have the power. Yeah, I don't need you anymore. I don't need to worry about what you think of me. And it's kind of realistic in a way where any teenager in that position would feel that way, you know, feel on top of the world. So where in a lot of Spider-Man adaptations we'll see him be this super humble guy, I think this is kind of cool here to see this ugliness earlier on, kind of in an Andrew Garfield way. I think it's very interesting, very gripping, and the art, like I said, is just amazing. I think this story does a lot with a little, so I just kind of wanted to give a round of applause to this issue because, you know, in a day and age where everyone knows Spider-Man's origin and we're all just kind of sick of it, this was kind of a great way of engaging me and making me care about it again. But that's just me. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Check out my other videos here. And yeah, that is the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.